This is Carol Fairfield with the November segment of It's Around Town. The title of our show today is Our Lake for Dummies. That title comes very affectionately and a little bit tongue-in-cheek. When I started talking with Thies to prepare for this program, I learned that I was a dummy as far as lakes issues are concerned. Thies is with us today. He needs very little introduction because he's been chair of the Lake Committee for the past 11 years, and he has served on the Lake Wildwood Board of Directors and been president for 1 year. We also have Bill Yanko with us today. Bill has served on the Lake Committee for the past 8 years, and his expertise as a microbiologist is in water testing and analysis. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Glad to have you today. Can you tell us, Terry, a little bit about the history of the Lake Committee?
I can. Back in prehistoric times, there was an actual Lake Committee. I don't know the exact history of when it was disbanded and folded into Public Works, but when I moved to Lake Wildwood in 2003, the lake was part of the Public Works Committee. And in 2005, we had some problems with the lake, with the vegetation, the weeds, and some algae issues. And at that time, the Lake Committee was reinstated.
Okay, and you have been chair for a long time, and from what you told me, the committee has a lot of stability. The members tend to stick with this.
I think we have almost all of the original members in the Lake Committee. So we have a great committee. We have a lot of fun, and we drink a little wine from time to time.
That's very fortunate for our committee because the lake is one of our most valuable assets. So we're glad to have this level of expertise managing our resources. Can you tell us the exact mission of the Lake Committee?
Well, I tell you what, I'm just going to read what our mission is that appears on our website and was crafted when we started in 2005. The purpose of the Lake Committee is to assist the board in its oversight responsibility for the preservation and fitness of the lake for use by members, guests, and residents, especially with regard to the quality of water and the inputs that affect it, including nutrients, sediment, and invasive flora and fauna.
That sounds pretty complicated, but you've been managing it well. Right now, the lake is lowered for the annual maintenance and dredging. Can you tell us a little bit about that process?
I can. We started this year about the 1st of October, and we opened a small valve called the anaerobic valve, which is 40 feet deep in the lake. And that provides cold water down the stream, and we do this with Sierra Streams, a conservationist group, to help with the spawn of the salmon. They like the cold water coming down, and it's very effective to help the spawn. On the 14th or 15th, we open the big slide gates, and we simulate a storm, an early fall storm, and we do that until the lake gets down 10 to 12 feet, and then we close the slide gates, which we did. Now, with the early rains, we've had to modulate that a little bit, and we have another valve, a 30-inch valve, that we can modulate so that we let out all of that water that's coming in to maintain 10 to 12 feet so that we can remove the silt. And so far, our Public Works people have been able to get into Deer Creek, and they're still working in Deer Creek, and they also got into Wildwood Creek, which comes out of the golf course, and went in there to finish up the sediment that was in Wildwood Creek due to the culvert collapse.
Now, what happens to all the dirt that they dredge out of the lake?
Well, some of it goes into those holding, we call them desiccation pits, where the water is drained, that are right there by the bridge. And then some of it goes up by truck to the Hola branch, which is contiguous to Lake Wildwood.
I was really educated when you told me that we're very fortunate that a lot of the silt comes down through the Deer Creek area, so and that's a very easy way for us to dredge and keep the lake clear. Whereas if we had a flatter, wider access, you said the lake might just actually silt up over time.
It really helps us because we can get in there, it's shallow enough that we can get the caterpillars in there and the shovels and take it out.
Okay, well, Bill, I guess one of your major responsibilities is the water analysis and testing. Can you tell us a little bit about that process and how you oversee that?
Sure. We can divide our water quality monitoring program into three different aspects. One is physical measurements that we do on the lake. Another is water chemistry, and the third one is public health testing. Under each of those categories, on physical measurements, we monitor the temperature of the water and water clarity. For water chemistry, we test for pH, conductivity, dissolved oxygen, total and reactive phosphorus, nitrate, and ferrous iron. That one's a little obscure, and maybe I'll say a couple more words about that. And then the last aspect is our public health testing. And under that, we test for total coliform and E. coli and blue-green algae. Now, some of these measurements we do are pretty self-apparent. Things like temperature and water clarity don't really require much explanation. Dissolved oxygen is one of the measurements that's quite critical in the lake. If the dissolved oxygen levels were to get too low, we'd start to see fish dying. Total and reactive phosphorus and nitrate is quite important to us. These are simply fertilizers. Same fertilizers you use in your garden also fertilize the microorganisms and the algae and the plants growing in the lake. So if the levels of these nutrients get too high, it's definitely problematic for the quality of water in the lake. I mentioned ferrous iron. As I said, that's a little obscure. We measure that in the deep water, and that gives us a measurement of how much phosphorus is pumped into the lake through a process called internal loading. That's different than phosphorus that flows into the lake through our streams and creeks.
Of those three items, bacteria that you said we monitor, the blue-green algae, the coliform bacteria, and the E. coli, which tends to give us the most trouble and what levels get higher?
We're not really having any serious problems with any of these, fortunately.
Well, that's good to know.
The E. coli bacteria is what we base the safety of using the water on. US EPA has established limits for E. coli, and we use the EPA criteria for judging the acceptability of our lake water for swimming and recreation. We rarely exceed the E. coli limits in the lake. We occasionally see values that exceed the limits in the main creeks that flow into the lake, and we have one small creek that's problematic. That's the small creek, which is really more of a drainage ditch that flows in under Meadow Park Bridge, right next to the studio here. That small creek is very commonly exceeds the EPA limits for E. coli during the summer. Fortunately, during the summer, that creek has very, very low flow in it, so it doesn't really impact the lake levels.
Okay, I know last year we had news of a sewage leak that impacted our lake. Which one of you would like to address that? I think, Terry, you and I touched on it when we prepared.
Yeah, I'd like to back up just
Okay,
a second
sure.
and have Bill, you know, we get a lot of questions and you see on these websites out there that, you know, people write that Lake Wildwood is not safe, or there's been a spill or something. But Bill, I think we could generally say that this lake is clean, safe, and that there's no problems here.
Well, certainly from our bacterial testing, we're not seeing any evidence of any serious microbial contamination in the lake. Those occasions where we do see an occasional test that exceeds the limit, we immediately go back and retest to check to make sure this is not
Validated.
an
Yeah.
ongoing problem. In environmental testing, we're going to see occasional samples that exceed the limit. E. coli bacteria are used as an indicator because they're commonly found in the fecal material of all warm-blooded animals. And we can just incidentally happen to pull a sample at a particular spot right after some ducks have swum by. And you might get an elevated value because of that. But you go back and test minutes later and it's
Be
fine.
fine.
So there will be occasional, but we see no chronic pollution problems in this lake at all.
Great, that's good to hear. And I know last year when we did have that very short-term sewage leak, there was very fast action by both Lake Wildwood and the county.
Yes, the county sand department came out, and we did have one leak. We have, around the lake, the sewage system has 13 lift stations. Because of our topography, you have to push it uphill, and then it flows downhill, uphill, downhill. So we have 13 lift stations, and normally if there is a sewage leak, it's either at or very near a lift station. And that happened this summer in Hideaway. One of the lines broke about 10 feet from the lift station, and the county sand people were here immediately. We only had about 1,000 gallons, which isn't an awful lot in the lake. And it was immediately tested. The beach was closed for a day or two, and it was just fine.
Yeah, I think it was handled very quickly, and we were back to normal in no time. Let's see, can you tell us a little bit about the goose control program? We know that that's a big issue here.
Yeah, well, Bill mentioned about warm-blooded animals, all having E. coli and coliform bacteria in the excrement, and that's kind of a lead-in, why do we have a goose control program? And there are several reasons. One of them is that they spread coliform bacteria and E. coli. They also transmit the swimmer's itch. They put more nutrients, more phosphorus in the lakes, and they're just generally disgusting.
How do you really feel about that?
So we have a number of ways that we handle the program. We have dog patrols, which are specially chosen dogs, and they're handled by Dave Anderson. He's the head of the dog patrol group. and they're chosen by their ability to follow command and friendliness to people. We have a program at night where we use green lasers so that we can get them to leave the lake and not roost overnight. We do coordinated strikes where we put dogs on all the beaches and all the parks, and then we have about 4 or 5 power boats out there chasing them off the lake. And if we do that 2-3 days in a row, it's pretty darn effective. In the spring, we do egg oiling, and most of it's out on the island where they lay the most of their eggs, and we oil them with corn oil, and then they won't hatch. Also, they lay eggs in the covers of boats and on the shoreline that are much harder to find, but we do our best to do that because the lifespan of a goose is probably 15 to 18 years on average, and when they are born here or hatched here, 3 years later they come back to reproduce again. So that can create a sort of a geometric progression, and if we don't control that, it gets out of hand. And when we started this goose program in about 2005 or 6, we used to have flocks of hundreds of them in Commodore Park, and we've been able to get it down to maybe 50 to 75, and these are not migrating geese. These are what they call resident geese. And we work every year to see if we can do a better job. One thing too is our membership can help. And if you're on the lake and you're out boating and you see a flock of geese, you know, drive up to them and get them airborne. And if you see them on the parks, chase them into the lake. So it's a matter of harassment, basically. And if they're harassed enough, they will leave.
Well, I'm glad I'm not a goose trying to live
No,
in Lake
you don't wanna
Wildwood.
be
It
a
sounds
goose.
like you're making life pretty difficult for the geese. Can one or the other of you tell us a little about our herbicide program and our war against weeds?
Well, part of the mission of the Lake Committee is to keep the lake appropriately clean for boating and swimming and also fishing, and it's a balance between the fishermen and the people who use the lake. And I always tell people, remember, this is a lake, it's not a swimming pool, so we are going to have weeds. And we have enough nutrient level in the lake to support weeds. We outsource all of our herbicide work to a firm by the name of Clean Lakes. And we've been doing that with Clean Lakes for 11 years. And they do all the permitting for us, they do all the reporting, they do all of the surveying before they put herbicides in the lake, and they do the actual application of herbicides. Their equipment is very, very sophisticated, very modern. They have side-looking sonar, and they can go around the lake, they survey it, and they can see where all the weeds are, but they still have to go back to the old-fashioned rake when they want to find out what weed it is, because each weed takes a little bit different process for treating it.
Okay, I think you named off the different weeds we have here. Do we have one that's really a stronger presence than another, or how do they affect us?
I don't think that you can say one is stronger than the other. Probably the most difficult to eradicate is American pondweed. And that's the one that comes to the surface and has the long leaves on it. Basically the weeds that we deal with are American pondweed, naiad, coontail, and Eurasian milfoil. This year, and you know, from year to year, it's difficult to tell what weeds will grow where. We thought we could get some sort of a pattern in the weed growth over the years, but it just hasn't happened that way. And we don't know from year to year what weed is going to be the problem and which one isn't and where they're going to grow. So that's what Clean Lakes does when they come out and survey.
So we're lucky to have a vendor with that equipment that maps our weeds and takes care of them for us.
They're very professional, and we're very pleased with the work that they've done.
Okay, so I guess we're winning the war against weeds. Now, one last thing I'd like to ask about that I've heard people comment on is, eek, our lake has leeches. What about that?
For some reason, Terry asked me to talk about leeches. I'm not sure if there was a message there or not, but Terry touched on the fact that a lake is a natural body. It's a living entity. We share the lake with a myriad of different life forms that Mother Nature has provided.
For better or for worse?
For better or for worse. Leeches are in that category. Leeches are common in water bodies in this area. Every summer you'll see a story on the news about leeches in the American River or leeches in the Sacramento. They're just part of our normal environment. We are fortunate that the leeches we have here are little tiny ones. If you go to the Midwest or the Southeast, the leeches can be 2 to 3 inches long.
Ooh,
and
that's gross, yeah.
Yeah, they're pretty disgusting.
Well, I think Terry also said that they're really localized in small areas of our lake.
Yeah, they tend to be localized. Some people seem to be more attractive to them. I think we've all been at a party somewhere in the summer, and there's always someone there who says the mosquitoes always come to me and they leave everyone else alone.
I'm one of those people.
It seems a little bit that way with leeches. There can be an area where you're swimming and 2 or 3 people will get the little tiny leeches attached to them, and others in the group will not.
Okay.
And it's not clear why that is. Now, the good news is these leeches don't carry any diseases. They're an irritating little critter, but there's very little risk connected with them.
Okay. Terry told me also that you can actually make a leech trap.
Yes, there are leech traps. I don't know how effective they are for overall reducing, but you can catch leeches in them. You can simply Google leech trap on the internet and find out how to make them, but they're typically little coffee cans, and you put small holes in it and put some meat in it, and that will attract the leeches.
Okay.
I've also read that there are some chemical repellents that may help. DEET.
For the person, for the swimmer,
Yeah,
for the
swimmer.
swimmer.
To put on.
Okay.
DEET may help,
Okay.
and there's some other products, again, that they can be researched on the internet.
Okay, well, thank you. I think it's getting close to time to close. But I thank both of you gentlemen for coming today, and I think I am going to lose my Lake Dummy title now, as I feel that I'm educated. And our community thanks you for the work you do, and we are very pleased to have our clean, clear lake. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The holidays are fast approaching, and so get ready for a whirlwind of events. First, there will be a theater by the book at the Miners Foundry on November 16th at 7 p.m. They will read the play, The Dresser, for your enjoyment. Check the Miners Founder website for tickets. Thanksgiving weekend will feature, as always, Holiday at the Empire Mine. The living history characters will be entertaining groups as they tour the clubhouse and the cottage. You might even find me as Mrs. Bourne on Saturday afternoon. The tours are Friday and Saturday, November 25th and 26th, from 11 to 4 p.m. It's a great way to entertain your family on Thanksgiving weekend. The Christmas fair will also be at the fairgrounds on Friday through Sunday, November 25th through 27th. The hours are 10 to 5. The cost is $5, and kids and parking is free. It's a great time to find some gifts for your family members. Music in the Mountain concerts will be taking place at the Amaral Center in the fairgrounds December 3rd, 8th, and December 10th through 11th. Tickets are available at the Music in the Mountains office and at the website. The Lake Wildwood Christmas Dinner Dance will be December 3rd in the Community Center. The tickets are $50 a person, and you can get your tickets through administration. Santa's Breakfast will kick off the holiday season at the Community Center on December 10th. Get your tickets through administration and bring the kids and grandkids. The annual Toy Run is also coming up on December 10th. Many Lake Wildwood residents participate in this event when hundreds of motorcycles come through the fairgrounds with gifts for less fortunate children in our community. Of course, the wonderful Cornish Christmas and Victorian Christmas are coming up soon as well. So take your vitamins and take a nap and get ready for the rush of the holiday season. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for coming to It's Around Town, and get ready for the holiday surge as it's coming at us quickly. See you next time. This is Carol Fairfield, your host of It's Around Town.